The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye.
It's Thursday, May 17th, Friday, May 18th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We're 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network. We are also live on Periscope.tv. Every Monday through Friday night, we are live there right now. Hi, Periscope, how are you? You can also catch us on our YouTube channel for our archives. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio if you want to check us out live. Or, well, not live, but our archives. Hit the subscribe button for that. I would appreciate that. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You could rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We're going to have a great night tonight. Big story coming out of Washington State today. Is it, or is it not? The third Thursday of every month, we bring in the Rebel Planet's Jamie Sexton to come in and tell us the stories behind the stories on all the alternative topics in the news. Jamie's a former actor and musician turned alternative news reporter, creating the Rebel Planet, an alternative news site that takes a look at any news that's being covered up or only halfway reported. Tonight, in hour number one, we take a look at D.B. Cooper. Some potentially breaking news in that case. Here in hour one, we have author and researcher Bruce Smith. You probably recognize his name. He's been on this show a couple of times. In hours 2 and 3, we will get back into the lack of false flags recently. And if you're looking up north of the border, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he's kind of at it with his antics again. We're going to get into that and so much more. But first, we bring in Bruce Smith, who's written all about D.B. Cooper. Bruce, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Dave.
It's good.
This has been a big day for D.B. Cooper stories. It's a fascinating story.
It really is a fascinating story, man, because we are really, really on the edge of potentially something big here. Because today it was released that a book publisher, who's probably looking for money, says a man named Walter Recca has identified himself, or formerly identified himself, as Dan Cooper, or known as D.B. Cooper. This happened way back in November, or in 1971, on a flight leaving from Seattle. So why don't you fill us in on the D.B. Cooper case previously, the history on it, Bruce?
Okay, just briefly, a little short synopsis. What the big flap that's going on in the D.B. Cooper world tonight is that there's a very interesting story about the most recent suspect, and as you mentioned, his name is Walter Recca, R-E-C-A. But the D.B. Cooper case is a huge mystery. 46 years old and has never really been solved. The FBI walked away from it 2 years ago saying, oy vey, we can't solve it, it's beyond us, and they threw in the towel. And interestingly enough, that really opened the case for a lot of internet sleuths to pick up the slack, and also allowed a lot of individuals to start reading FBI documentation, because now that the FBI actually closed the case, their files, which they formerly had exclusive control over, are now public property. So the Freedom of Information requests are flying back and forth. And for the first time, lots and lots of people are seeing lots and lots of FBI documentation on D.B. Cooper. Briefly, the skyjacking happened like this. A 727, a Northwest Orient 727, hopscotching its way across the United States, lands in Portland, Oregon's airport about 2:30 on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving in 1971. About 25 passengers get on. There's a total of 40-some-odd passengers and a man in a black suit who had identified himself as Dan Cooper when he bought a ticket in Portland for the flight to Seattle, sat in the rear seat, and he handed a note to the stewardess who was sitting in her jump seat directly behind him as they were rolling down the runway in Portland, and it said, "Miss, I want you to sit next to me. I have a bomb. I'm hijacking this airplane." And she didn't know what was happening. She got rattled. She came over and sat next to him, and he showed her a bomb in a briefcase. And at that point, a second flight attendant came by who could see that the first flight attendant, Florence, was really getting rattled. So the second flight attendant, Tina, swapped places with her, and Florence went up to the cockpit and dropped the note into the pilot's lap. And thus history was born. The plane was hijacked. In those days, a U.S. airliner was being hijacked on average every other week. And I was 22 years old at the time, and I was in New York. I was going to college, and so this was no big deal. Most of the time when somebody hijacked an airplane, they just wanted to go to Cuba, and they had some political motive, and they wanted to join forces with Fidel and the revolution and all of that. But Cooper was different, and he wanted money, and he wanted parachutes, and the plane that he had hijacked was, in fact, a 727, which had an internal staircase system to allow it to land in smaller airports that wouldn't have the usual jetway configuration where passengers could easily walk from the gate onto the plane and exit the plane when they arrived at their destination. So this was 1971, 46 years ago, life was very different. You could walk on a plane with a gun. You could walk on a plane with a hand grenade. No one checked you. There were no metal detectors. There was no baggage inspection or anything like that. So the world was very different back then. And Cooper exchanged the passengers in Seattle for $200,000 and 4 parachutes. 2 were front parachutes and 2 were back parachutes. And about 2.5 hours after they landed, and after 4 fueling trucks came up to refuel the plane, which, by the way, was the total bill for refueling the plane, I just found out, was $116. So, like I said, the price of gasoline, of jet fuel, was 19 cents a gallon. Things were very different. And about 7:30 at night, before Thanksgiving, the 727 took off with the 3 cockpit crew in the front, Tina Mucklow in back, who was held hostage, and D.B. Cooper, and the 5 of them headed south. Cooper said, "Fly me to Mexico." And about a half hour after they took off, he lowered the rear stairs and jumped out. And most people believe that he jumped out somewhere in the southern part of Washington State, west of the Cascades, somewhere around the Interstate 5 corridor. He had told the pilots to fly at 10,000 feet, don't go over 200 miles an hour, keep the wheels down and the wing flaps at 15, which kept the plane going very, very slowly. But at 10,000 feet, you could have the staircase open and not be worried about, you would still have enough oxygen to breathe. Over 10,000 feet, things get a little dicey. You can get altitude sickness, you can get nausea, migraines, things like that. The cutoff point for sufficient oxygen for normal cognitive function is about 10,000 feet. And so Cooper knew all that stuff, and they're flying along, and then the pilots noted that the plane started bouncing, or in their terms, they said curtsy. And what they believe happened was that Cooper had walked down these stairs, and when he had jumped off, the staircase bounced back like a diving board, bouncing into the staircase and functioning as a lever, pushing a huge wave of air into the plane and making the plane momentarily unstable, so the pilots had to trim it out. Not a very different Cooper at all, but that is when they believe that Cooper failed out. He's never been seen ever since.
Give me 1 second, bro. Bruce, give me 1 second. Jamie, I got to get you to turn your sound down there, please. Thank you, buddy.
There we go.
There we go. Jamie Sexton with us as well from the Rebel Planet. Going to get you to turn it down a little bit more because we're getting a lot of echoing on this end, bud. All right. Sorry, Bruce. You were saying we were never able to see or hear from D.B. Cooper again.
Yeah, once no one saw him jump, but it's widely believed that he did jump. And he's never been seen again. His identity is still unknown, and even more puzzling, nothing has ever been found of anything from the skyjacking. So the parachute, his body, the bomb, the briefcase, and all the money hasn't been found, except for about $6,000 that was found on a Columbia River beach about 8 years later. And that just adds to the mystery, because to this day, no one can figure out conclusively how the money got there, or when, and why was it in the unusual condition that it was found. There were 2 money finds within 2 days of each other. The first find is generally known to the public, and that was the 3 bundles that an 8-year-old kid found scraping the sand in February of 1980 when he was 8 years old. And those bundles were tightly compressed. The money was kind of smooshed together. And in fact, the money was so tightly compressed, they are still finding more bills in those wads as the instrumentation to separate these monies becomes increasingly more sophisticated. And in the last few years, they found a few more bills. After that initial discovery, The family went to the cops. The cops told them to go to the FBI. The FBI said, holy shimoly. They came roaring down with picks and shovels and backhoes and things like that, and they started digging up the beach. And they found more money, but it was in a very different kind of condition. It was itsy-bitsy, teensy-weensy kind of little pieces of money. The biggest was maybe 2 to 3 inches long. The serial numbers all matched Cooper's ransom bills, which had been recorded. And that money was found to a depth of 3 feet down in the area where the 3 bundles were found. So the question is, how the hell did that money get there and when? And nobody knows. So this mystery, this crime, has mystery piled on top of mystery. And today, we heard a very interesting alternative theory about Walter Recker. And shall we get into that a little bit right now? Or
Absolutely, we can get into it, but I have one question for you about the money. With the amount of money that was found on the beach of the Columbia River, it almost sounds like this really wasn't about the money, and he was smart enough to know that they would have marked the bills to try and trace where he was going. Do you think the money was just part of it because that's just what you do?
I don't know. Now this gets down to reading the tea leaves, and I'm here to tell you, after 46 years, there are a lot of us who have been reading the tea leaves for a very long time, and that is the essence of the D.B. Cooper case. There's only small pieces of evidence, and most of it is behavioral. How did D.B. Cooper ask for things? How did he talk? How did he interact with people? Did he know how to put on a parachute? What kind of parachute did he put on? How come he didn't use the other parachute? It's these interpretive kind of things, and that's the way it is with the money. Was the money? Did he steal an airplane to get the money? If he did, why did he lose the money? Maybe it was for other reasons. Maybe the money wasn't important to him. Who knows? It's almost like psychic sleuthing, trying to read somebody else's mind. What was his motivation? Who was he? Where did he come from? One of the facts of the D.B. Cooper case is that it seems as if D.B. Cooper came from nowhere, and when he jumped out of his plane, he jumped back into nowhere. No one reported him missing. There's never been anybody. There's been 1,000 people who have confessed to being D.B. Cooper, and there's hardly any way to disprove them. And today we have yet another confession. Mm-hmm. This one is signed and notarized. So it's like this guy's confessing, and he's damn serious. But he's also dead. So okay, maybe that's the price. The price for solving this. It's like we got to deal with a dead guy.
Before we go any further, Jamie Sexton from the Rebel Planet has joined us. We had a little bit of a Skype issue with him getting him in, but Jamie, glad you are here tonight on the show for your monthly appearance. And please meet Bruce Smith, who is one of the top researchers in the world on the D.B. Cooper case, in my opinion.
Hi, Bruce. How you doing? Yeah, I'm fascinated with D.B. Cooper. I've always been fascinated with him. I was listening to the things you were saying. I had a couple of questions. What is the total amount of money that he supposedly had, and how much of that has been found, or do we know?
He was given, again, it's not definitive. Oddly enough, the money that he supposedly received, he asked for $200,000, and he supposedly got $200,000. But one of the Northwest Orient personnel who handled the money and says he was instructed to count it, said he counted out $250,000. So, maybe somebody pocketed $50,000 between the freight counter where it got counted, and by the time they drove out to the airport, maybe there were 2 robberies. We don't know. But it is believed it is believed that it was $200,000 because it was all in 20s and it was all wrapped with rubber bands and it all fit into one large bank bag, and that seems to be plausible. Was there another 50 grand in there? That would have been another 20% bigger, and it is believed that the $200,000 and that satchel, that bank satchel, would have weighed about 22 pounds, which most skydivers say is about the maximum amount of money you want dangling off of one hip when you're skydiving, because it's going to make you asymmetrical in terms of wind resistance. Being streamlined going through the air is critical, particularly when you jump out of an airplane that's going 200 miles an hour. So your initial
so your parachute opens correctly, right?
Well, that's another thing. Is where and how and when did he open the parachute? Did he?
And how would he know in the dark, right?
Well, he's in the dark, so it had always been assumed that he did a free fall skydiving departure, but now it is widely known and widely believed that the CIA testing and covert operations that were conducted in Thailand during the Vietnam War with how to get yourself out of a 727, the best way to do that is to pull the ripcord while you're in the plane and let your parachute pull you off the staircase. That way you don't have to worry about spatial inertia or not knowing where you are, turbulence, bouncing around, tumbling, or anything like that. The parachute is going to stabilize you and it's going to slow you down right away. So your the difficulty in leaving the plane will be minimized.
Right.
Of course, the FBI doesn't really want to get too much into that. They like the narrative where, oh, it was too tough. D.B. Cooper died in the jump. We just haven't found the body yet. Stay tuned. But
they don't like anybody getting away.
Yeah, it's like, don't confuse me with too much facts.
So how much of the money has been recovered, or are they able to tell because of the condition of it?
Well, the only money that I know that's been recovered is the money that was found on the beach in 1980, and it is estimated that the total amount of money that was on that, even though most of it was torn up, was about $6,200. That would leave about 190 and change is out there in the world somewhere.
Yeah.
But can we assume that none of it has ever been spent, Bruce, because of the fact all the bills were marked, or do we know if they were only certain bills that were marked? Because you would think that if the money was spent, eventually one of these bills would turn up in circulation somewhere. You
would think. The reality is, and I continue to give the FBI credit for what they did to prepare for this kind of crime. They anticipated D.B. Cooper. They anticipated hostage type of crimes involving large sums of money. So they never wanted to be caught flat-footed. So they stockpiled monies in a special vault in banks that they would have access to 24/7, so that whenever a crime was committed that involved hostages and a lot of money, they wouldn't have to tell the guy, the banks are closed right now. We'll get back to you Monday morning when they open back up. And so that really streamlined it facilitated the D.B. Cooper skyjacking. Now the question is, did D.B. Cooper know that? Did he know that they were waiting for him and ready for him with money, and he was going to get it right away? I don't know that, and I don't know anybody that knows that definitively. So the only thing that we do know is that the FBI had a vision of some of the potentials that could happen. The money was
but even though they may have, I was wondering though, even though they may have preempted that and cataloged those numbers of those bills, it might be in 71. I don't know how proficient systems were to actually track that, especially there wasn't a digital way to do it. It would have had to been through banking processes and stuff. Somebody would have had to catch that. So it would have been a lot easier theoretically to launder money back then.
Yes, and there's many different ways to launder money. You could go to casinos. You could go to Hong Kong. You could go to the Cayman Islands. So you could give it to the mafia and pay 10%, handling charge. Or you could just put the money into a black market bank. There are financial institutions that cater to this kind of money. And so the money never gets laundered. It just stays dirty for its entire lifespan, and people who want to buy guns or run women or drugs or sex trafficking or want to pay off bribes or anything like that, they can go to these black market banks and do their transactions. It's life on the dark web existed long before there was the internet. Bankers make money, any way they can. So, you don't have to be a suburbanite walking in with a checking account to do business.
I always assumed that because of the elaborate nature of his getaway plan, or the presumed getaway plan, that wasn't the only elaborate planning he did. Somebody that puts that much thought and preparation into what they're doing probably had a whole lot of contingencies built in. I would think,
I would tend to agree with you. I don't know how much planning went into it, but I know that Cooper conducted his crime with a lot of knowledge. Now, did he have to do a lot of homework to get ready for the crime, or did he learn it on the company nickel because he was working for the CIA or Special Operations in Vietnam or the U.S. Army, or just what? We don't know, and the FBI certainly investigated all those guys, and I would say, and the guys who run commando operations and do covert operations for a living, most notably the guys who are in what's known as SOG, Special Operations Group, from that era in the Materials Assistance Command Vietnam. Those guys are absolutely convinced that D.B. Cooper is one of them.
I would probably be inclined to agree with that. I mean, jumping out of a jet airliner like that under those circumstances, that takes a lot of confidence. That's probably the riskiest part of his entire plan. And if you feel confident enough to do that, you're like, yeah, I can do that. That's that part I got. You know what I mean? Like, then you have to be somebody with, like you say, some degree of knowledge of even and confidence to be able to even do that. Never mind the money and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're jumping out in dark. It's November. It's 8 o'clock at night. It's 40 degrees. It's raining. You gotta, as one guy told me, he says Cooper had gonads as big as watermelons. I mean, you gotta have big ones.
Oh, yeah. He's either crazy as hell and careless and did die, or, like I said, he thought, he probably, I don't know. I like to entertain the idea that he made it and enjoyed the money.
Maybe. And this might be a good time to transition into this guy, this Walter Recca.
Walter Recca, yes.
Today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Lead us into this, because this story came down this morning that they were looking at it, and there was a press conference this morning, I believe, in Michigan and or Seattle, one of the two places.
It was Michigan. It was in Michigan.
Okay, so break this down for us.
Yeah, this whole conference and the release of this the identification of Walter Recca has basically come out of the blue and hit everybody like, holy shamoly, what is this all about? How come everybody's keeping this quiet, and he was on nobody's radar screen and things like this? But this is what happened. A book publisher by the name of Principia Media in Grand Rapids, Michigan, had been contacted a couple years ago. One of their editors, apparently a freelance editor, had an uncle by the name of Carl Laurin, Laurin. Uncle Carl was living in DeLand, Florida at the time, but he had previously been living up in the middle of Michigan, northern Michigan, and had a friend, excuse me, by the name of Walter Recca. And those two guys met when they were skydiving for the Michigan Air National Guard in the 1950s. And they were kind of good old boys. And Walter Recca, as it turns out, was kind of a badass. And Carl eked out a story from Walter over the 40 or 50 years of their friendship. So Walter never directly confessed to being D.B. Cooper until basically his deathbed, when he did the written confession. But he left hints along the way, and Carl kept nudging him for more information. And the kind of guy that we've described D.B. Cooper could have been, Walter fits that kind of general profile. Ballsy kind of guy, living on the wrong side of the law half of the time. He was in and out of juvie as a kid, and robbed a restaurant, a hamburger joint, and got caught because his getaway driver had parked illegally and was getting a parking ticket. So these guys didn't have the greatest amount of smarts either. And in the course of events, Walter decided not to go to court or to trial to face robbery charges, which would have been modest, I think. How many years are you going to get for robbing a hamburger joint? And skip bail, and that made his problems much worse. And he started living off the grid, changing his name, false identities, and living by his wits. And how he got into the military, I don't know. And Principia Media did not release a lot of information today. They gave us an overview in a one-hour presentation, and that's it. So there's a lot of details that are still missing. At any rate, Carl wrote in her book that Principia is putting out that describes the life that Walter Recca had, and that Walter, to get by, would do all kinds of construction jobs, odd jobs, couldn't really keep a job, and to pay the rent he would rob the occasional bank. On November 24th, 1971, he decided to rob Northwest Orient Flight 305 and gave Carl lots of information about how he did it, much of which is wrong. So that tells me that Walter Recca is a wannabe skyjacker. He may have done other crimes, but I don't think he stole this airplane. But nevertheless, Carl believed him. And Carl continued to write that Walter then was approached, after the skyjacking, was approached by either somebody in the CIA or the NSA, and Walter said that there was a transformative kind of epiphany where two gentlemen said, "Look, buddy, do you want to go to prison?" And he said, "No." "Then that means you work for us." And they made him a grunt in the CIA in covert operations for contract firms to the CIA. And he basically spent the rest of his life running operations on a contract basis as a freelancer around the world, and spent most of his time in the Middle East. And when he died, the investigators hired by Principia Media found passports in Walter's name or with his picture from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and from the Soviet Union. They also found medical documentation for immunizations and vaccinations and things like that that indicated that this guy spent a lot of time in foreign countries. So Principia knew that they had a very interesting story. Now, whether he's D.B. Cooper or not, that's only part of the tale, and I believe that there is compelling reasons to believe that the little that they've told us about what Walter has said about skyjacking is all false and is based upon a keen reading of all the chat rooms and the books that have been written about D.B. Cooper. But in his own mind, he mixed it all up. The number one problem with Walter Recca as D.B. Cooper is that Principia Media and Carl had recorded Walter's recollections, excuse me, of the skyjacking. And he speaks in a very pronounced Minnesotan accent. And he says things with a very thick Canadian, Scottish kind of brogue where he says, you know, I'm doing and out. Well, you know, when I'm a boat over there, then I, you know, and he says there instead of there. He's not able to pronounce the TH consonant, and it becomes a there, it becomes a D. And his language and his presentation is really as a roughneck, a guy who lived by his wits in the woods and on the streets. He had an 8th grade education, and he doesn't fit the profile from what the flight attendants said and what other passengers had said of the plane, that Cooper looked and acted and talked like a middle management kind of businessman. And Walter Recca, in the tape recordings that were presented today, clearly does not sound like the individual that everybody on Flight 305 is describing. So right out of the chute, it's like, not this guy. Even more troubling, nobody from that side of the investigatory team, Principia, investigators that they hired, Carl, any of his family, anybody from Walter's side of the thing, has ever gone to any of the flight attendants, never went to the FBI. They never talked to me. They never talked to anybody else that's knowledgeable about the case and corroborate any of their information. So as we begin to know more about what they're saying and what they're offering as proof that Walter Recca is D.B. Cooper, it's becoming increasingly clear that these guys are wrong, that their information is just wildly inaccurate. The Washington Post, the big boys, the big media, what's commonly known these days as mainstream media, is really jumping into this, and they're having individualized interviews with the principals, with Carl, with Principia Media. And so you're getting different kinds, different levels, different degrees of information from the various media outlets. And the Washington Post has probably the most incisive and most significant interview so far. And they are reporting tonight that Carl this afternoon told them that Walter told Carl that he didn't know that a 727 had a rear stairs, and that he actually tried to get out the side stairs and was redirected to the rear by a flight attendant. That is the most stupidest thing I've ever heard about D.B. Cooper.
Yeah.
This sounds like some amateur puzzle put together that a dead guy wanted to, get his name back in the media right afterwards with this Walter Recca.
That's the easy quick take. This is a guy who's been drinking a little bit too much bourbon all day long out in the backwoods on his front porch and is just telling a good old story. And he's got a buddy that he's known for the last 60 years who just accepts him at face value.
Yeah.
There are relationships like that. But if you dig a little deeper, like where did the passports come from? And then you go, maybe some parts of this story have some truth to it. And then the question is, how far down this rabbit hole do you want to go? Because there's 1,000 people who have confessed to being D.B. Cooper. And so either we have a lot of people who do way too much drinking, or we have some people who might be compelled through MK Ultra or other mind control or behavior modification programs, which we know are real. They may be convinced that they are D.B. Cooper because somebody wants them to believe they're D.B. Cooper. And maybe that's going on too. And that's what makes this an important story to talk about.
This guy honestly does not sound smart enough comparatively to the man that has been described in previous information that not only you have turned up, Bruce, but others have mentioned about him as well. That he was well-refined, well-dressed, clean-shaven, knew exactly what he was doing. The description that you were giving of Walter Recca sounds like somebody who's a little bit out of control.
Exactly. Yeah. You know,
even the sketch
the flight attendant told the FBI he was a nice guy. D.B. Cooper was a nice guy. Walter Recca was not a nice guy. His family told him, he said he had a mean streak a mile long. and when he would flip out, he would get violent.
Amazing. The sketch doesn't even look like him to me. I don't see a resemblance.
Yeah, you would think at this point, if you're going to make an international press conference and world release kind of thing, you'd want to have some better pictures, on your website.
Yeah, it doesn't look anything like him as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no. And they had an eyewitness. There's a guy by the name of Jeff Osadich, who says that he met Walter in Washington at a diner at about 9 o'clock that night, and the guy was wearing a black suit and was soaking wet and didn't know where he was. And Jeff said that this guy, Walter, they sat next to each other and had a cup of coffee in a diner, asked him to make a phone call to call Carl, who was living in Washington State north of Seattle, come and pick him up. So is Jeff lying, or is Jeff confused, or was Walter actually wandering around in the rain the night before Thanksgiving in Washington State, and the next day realized, holy shamoly, D.B. Cooper was out in the woods too? Who knows? Or maybe somebody put Walter in the woods, let him wander around for a while, and maybe gave him some pharmaceuticals that led him to believe that he was D.B. Cooper. Who knows? You the guys are the alternative journalists. Come on, what do you think?
I don't believe it's him. Jamie, what do you think?
I don't either. I haven't followed it too much, but at least to the extent of what we're covering so far, I don't think it's the guy. I really don't. I think Bruce hit it on the head when he said that he's a guy with a buddy, and they sort of fuel their own imaginations over the years. The thing, the thing with D.B. Cooper, it's one of those mysteries that since you don't know, you can't prove a negative, and so and with the advent of the internet and everything, information is shared so widely, myth, fact, all of it. So if somebody did their homework over the past decade or two, even before the internet, and read up on this story, you could invent any idea for a book deal or for notoriety, and and when you throw on top of it the guy in question is dead, you don't you have the makings for. Go ahead.
There's no question in my mind. Walter Recca is not D.B. Cooper. The question I do have in my mind is, who the hell was he?
Who was Walter, or who was DB?
Both. Who was Walter? Walter had a very secret, very violent life.
Yeah. Well, he might be
And-
one of those, under the radar kind of guys,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump in here, guys, and I would like to read a statement by the FBI because, like you, Bruce, the FBI really isn't buying this either. So they released this statement today. The FBI,
really? Okay.
yes, the FBI and I'm reading this courtesy of Seattle's King 5 News website, king5.com. The FBI continues to receive tips from members of the public, but none to date have resulted in a definitive identification of the hijacker. The tips have conveyed plausible theories, descriptive information about individuals potentially matching the hijacker, and anecdotes. Unfortunately, none of the tips provided or applications of new investigative technology have yielded the necessary proof of culpability beyond a reasonable doubt. Consequently, in July of 2016, we redirected resources allocated to the D.B. Cooper case in order to focus on other investigative priorities, following one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in FBI history. It would be inappropriate to comment on any specific tips provided to us in this case. However, our continued posture is to review any physical items provided directly related to the hijacker's parachute or ransom money and pursue follow-up actions as appropriate. So in other words, they're basically saying what you were saying, that we have another guy, so make it 1,001 D.B. Coopers running around the United States the last 46 years.
Yes, and British Columbia, by the way.
Yes, BC too.
Walter said he put the money in a BC bank. So that makes 2 D.B. Coopers that put money in a BC bank.
And
Got to put money in a Victoria bank, and God knows where Walter put his money.
Well, the
It may still be there.
interesting part about this is you could probably go on foundmoney.com in Canada or whatever that website is and check out if anything has been unclaimed by anybody who types in their name. So if you have any aliases, you can pretty much check it out from any bank in British Columbia. That's where it all
being that you guys are already in British Columbia, why don't we just say we'll split it 3 ways, okay? Dave, why don't you go, snooping around and see what you can find?
Well, I may need some of that Texas luck that Jamie has down there. So, but getting to the FBI for a second, the way I read that statement, Bruce, is this is just another eye-rolling publicity stunt.
I think it's more than an eye-rolling publicity stunt. To begin with, Carl and the Principia people, the people that gave the press conference today, they are true believers. Now, you may say they're naive, you may say they're stupid, you may say that they have hidden agendas that they may not even know about. They smell a buck and they're just going for it. They struck me, and I've talked to a number of people on the staff on the phone. They have all drunk the Kool-Aid. They are excited and ecstatic. And I don't think they're lying. I think they just really believe in what they've found, and they have believed their conclusions. This is the greatest application of what the FBI calls confirmational bias. You cherry-pick information, and you cherry-pick conclusions to fit the outcome you want. Now, I agree with the FBI. The number one thing, I don't agree with the FBI that they should have walked away from it. There's a lot of problems with the FBI's investigation. I have written extensively about it. But the number one thing with the FBI is it's true. They need a $20 bill from Cooper, and they need the parachute. And if you don't have a parachute or a $20 bill, you've got bubkas. And that's what I told Principia. The first thing when they called me to talk about the conference, I said, "Do you have a 20?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Then you just had a story then."
Well, what about now the parachute? Would they be able to identify a particular parachute? How do we know? I mean,
we should be able to. We should be able to, because again, this gets into the real nitty-gritty of the case. What kinds of parachutes were actually provided? to D.B. Cooper and Northwest Orient, and that is still controversial. That gets into the whole who is Earl Casey, because Earl Casey became the technical expert on parachutes to the FBI, but he was a bad actor. He ended up being murdered. So it's like, is he really legit? We have a lot of dicey stuff going on here, and the guy who seems to be the legitimate and authentic provider of the parachutes is a fellow by the name of Norm Hayden, who is an acrobatic pilot who is still alive, and he's 80-something, and he lives south of Seattle, and he gave two main chutes to Northwest Orient. He rented them to Northwest Orient. Cooper used one, and Norman got the other one back. And Norman has now given the unused back parachute to the Washington State Historical Museum in Tacoma. And they have it, and they put it on display. And so if there is a parachute out in the woods, like Walter says, it should look like the parachute that's in the museum, because the guy who owned the parachutes said he was the guy. He gave two identical parachutes to Northwest Orient. That's not what the FBI says, but that's what Norman is saying. And when it comes to the FBI doesn't need the FBI truly does not know what kind of parachutes were on the plane, because their documentation is so screwed up.
Huh.
We only got about 5 minutes left in hour number one here.
Yep.
And Bruce, we thank you so much for filling us in on such short notice. For the audience who doesn't know, literally when this broke down, I called Bruce up at about 2-3 o'clock this afternoon to see if he would come on. He got back to me around dinner time and said, absolutely, I would love to come on and share this with you. So, Bruce, knowing in your heart of hearts that Walter Recca is just another one of the 1,000 people who have described being D.B. Cooper, is this, in the end, maybe one of the last times that we are going to hear someone come out with admission of this due to age, that age category that he was in? They would all be in that dying zone, 1 foot in the grave, shall we say, if they are still alive.
Well, the short answer is no. It's not the end of it. It's just that the narrative is going to change. Instead of saying, well, it's my uncle, it's going to be, well, my grandfather,
Yeah.
So we'll just have a generational shift on it. But I do think we're going to get new and more sophisticated and more conclusive forensic tools, I think, that are going to give us an answer. We're going to find out who D.B. Cooper is. We're going to be able to get DNA and fingerprints and all of that morphology stuff, and we don't even have to even begin to talk about psychic sleuthing or remote viewing like we have in other nights. But all of those techniques over time are going to get better, and we're going to be more skilled, and we're going to find out who D.B. Cooper was. Or is.
I was always curious because wasn't it the media that botched his name? It was Dan Cooper, right? In other words, he identified himself as Dan Cooper.
Yeah, I have to speak for my brothers, my fellow journalists. We didn't botch it. What happened was this: the manifest gave last name, first initials. So they're looking for D. Cooper. The feds called the Portland Police Department and said, we're looking for a D. Cooper. Do you have anybody down there that's a bad boy? And one of the detectives says, well, I got a cat burglar that's named D.B. Cooper. And the feds said, go pick him up. There was a journalist standing next to him and said, so what's going on? He says, well, I'm getting in my squad car. I'm going to pick up D.B. Cooper. The FBI wants me to pick him up for questioning. He's a person of interest in the skyjacking. So the reporter then tells his editors, and they said the cops are looking for D.B. Cooper, which they were, but it was misleading. And by the end of the night, everybody loved the way it sounded, and even the FBI was calling him D.B. Cooper by midnight.
That's so bizarre that they never corrected it. And
they tried. They say they tried to, but they really didn't. That's what I see. I mean, all of their official documentation and reports. Well, you see, in the actual reports, they call them the HJ, which stands for hijacker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people, literally were doing research for a D.B. Cooper and looking at all the, the anagrams and the trying to piece it all together.
Oh, you don't want to go down that road. You're going to get the Zodiac people and the John Benet Ramsey people and the Amelia Earhart. And you could spend. Your show is not long enough, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We're into our final minute here with Bruce Smith, author, researcher, following the D.B. Cooper case for decades. Bruce, please do me a favor for our audience once again. Tell us about your book and where they can buy it.
Okay, I'm the author of D.B. Cooper and the FBI, a case study of America's only unsolved skyjacking. And you can buy it from Amazon. You can get it through a bookstore, but it's going to take a little while because your bookstore is going to have to buy it through Amazon, then they'll resell it. Either way, I'm going to get my royalty cut, so I thank you very much. And I'm open. If anybody wants to email me, read the book, see what you think, weigh in, There's a couple chat rooms. Come to the D.B. Cooper forum and introduce yourself and give us your opinion.
Thank you so much on short notice coming in to help our audience tonight, Bruce. Really appreciate it.
Good to meet you, Bruce.
Dave. Yes. Okay, Jamie.
We'll talk to you very, very soon, Bruce. That's Bruce Smith. Go get his book. Go get it. Go get his book. Well worth it. And in my opinion, one of the best on D.B. Cooper. Coming up in hours 2 and 3, Jamie Sexton from the Rebel Planet. We're going to get into a number of topics on the alternative side, starting right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Mary Ducina is going to join us. We're going to talk about intuition, psychic ability, and so much more, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR radio network, including the Fringe.fm. And if you want to watch us live during the show, you can check us out on Periscope.tv every Monday through Friday night. Our archives are on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. So go to youtube.com/spacedoutradio. They're right there. We would appreciate that. Hit that little red subscribe button. That always helps. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. There's not even any vowels in this, Bill. There's a Twitch, Quitch. I'm going to go with Quitch. Quitch is your password for tonight. Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. The Rebel Planet with Jamie Sexton is underway. We were joined first hour by author Bruce Smith, author about D.B. Cooper. Just go on to Amazon, put in Bruce Smith. You'll find his book. Go get it. It's a good one. I highly recommend you do that. Jamie, welcome back.
Yes, sir. Good to be back.
Man, that was a good first hour, man. Good first hour.
Yeah, it was. Did you kill your wasp during the break?
No, I had him on a metal stick, and he's definitely injured, and he fell off the broadcast desk. I don't know where the hell he went, but I'm definitely keeping my shoes on, because usually during the show I don't have my shoes on, but I'm definitely keeping my shoes on now because I don't need to get stung.
Well, now you just pissed him off. So.
Well, no, he looked in rough shape. I wanted to put him outside. I don't kill anything. Oh. I don't kill anything, that I don't have to. It's like if I find a spider in my house or something along those lines, I don't kill spiders. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you're a better man than me. I killed a snake in my house earlier.
Okay, you got to tell us this story, man. Fill us in.
Well, I had roofers have been at the house now for the past 3 days. So, it's like a construction zone around here. And I've had to keep the dogs in one part of the house to keep them away from bothering the roofers. And so the front door was open a little bit. So I went to go shut it. And I was on the phone. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw some movement on the floor. And I was like, wow, that kind of looked like a snake's tail. I was like, no way. So I started looking around, looked under the couch. And sure enough, there he was. And I was going to scoop him out with a stick and take him outside and let him be on his way, but the stick wasn't long enough, so I had to reach my arm under there, and he snapped and bit me a couple of times, and then he relocated under another piece of furniture, and this went on for about 30 minutes, and I had enough of it. I said, you know what? I don't have time for this. So, unfortunately, I had to end him.
Well, you're lucky. You're lucky it wasn't a poisonous snake, man.
Yeah, I can identify them pretty good. We got a big variety of indigenous snakes here in Texas, and you can usually tell the poisonous ones from the rat killers.
That just scares me. I hate snakes. Snakes. I don't care if it's a little garter snake or whatever, a red racer or whatever they call those. They scare the crap out of me. They just scare the crap out of me, and I'm not a snake guy. Not a snake guy whatsoever. So, I see a snake, I run the other way. Not a fan. Not a fan whatsoever of them.
I'm cool with them outside. I just don't want them in the house. That's a little bizarre. So I'm not going to have it. Although I've had pet snakes, but
no, not even. See, up here where I am, I'm high enough, and the temperature gets cold enough that snakes they don't like it here. You know what I'm saying? So we have garter snakes, but that's it. Now, if I travel an hour south of me, that's where you get into rattlesnake territory. Don't like them. Mm-hmm. Don't like them whatsoever.
I actually used to have a pet, and I use pet in quotation, pet rattlesnake. Yeah. I couldn't sleep at night.
Why?
I don't know. I'm not wired right. You know this. I don't know.
Well,
seemed like a good idea.
Well, I mean, we're talking to a guy here who also used to own a tiger.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And currently owns a monkey.
See, the monkey is cool. They don't allow us up here in Canada to own any exotic pets. They got an exotic pet law up here federally that you're just not allowed to own exotic pets. Now, if you have the right permit for it, let's say it's for movies or something along those lines, then they allow you.
Right.
But for the most
So
part, they don't
no
allow
exotic pets allowed.
No, none.
That's probably why they didn't let me in last time I tried to go up there.
Oh, you are exotic, my friend. You are exotic. What's new in the world of alternative news?
Oh, well, in the world of alternative, everything's alternative now, Dave. You know that.
Yes.
We just don't know what to believe, do we? I don't know. We got current stories out right now. The whole animals comment by the president in relation to MS-13, and that's kind of blowing up right now. That's current. We got the ongoing investigations into the election fraud, et cetera, which seems never ending. So I don't know. Pick your poison, man.
Well, you know what? You bring up a good point, because I also wanted to get into false flags again, and we can do that later on in the show. But this whole MS-13 thing, and if you haven't heard of MS-13, they are one of the most extreme violent street gangs that originated out of Los Angeles by a bunch of El Salvadoran refugees that really couldn't find their own clique in California, and they've really gone and taken violence to the extreme. They just don't kill you. They have to torture you while they kill you. They have to cut off body parts and make you suffer. And this is just innocent people. You may not have done anything to them. You could just be out taking your dog for a walk, and they don't care if you're male, female, senior citizen, or a child. They are absolute butchers. And what I'm surprised
Yeah, they have no
with,
discretion about their victims at all.
No, and what I'm surprised with, Jamie, is that there are actually people who are supporting their right to be in the country, including a lot of the media out there.
Yeah. I liken that to the same with, this influx of undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants into other parts of the world as well, not just here in the U.S. or Canada, but in Europe. There seems to be a social epidemic to accept this by a certain segment of the population. I don't know what is breaking down in terms of discretion and critical thinking when it comes to saying we're not comfortable with people who we don't know, and large percentages of those groups turn out to be dangerous. We're not comfortable with them just flooding into our country. I think what it gets conflated with is this idea of normal immigration, or people who are motivated to immigrate legally or illegally into another country for opportunity and prosperity and a better life, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what happens is that it gets sold by the media that if you don't accept, illegal immigration, then you're a bad person. You're not empathetic. You don't care about people. You're maybe a racist, or you're not a humanitarian. And I think the problem with that argument is that it's just fundamentally flawed, because when you let people into a country, past a boundary, and you don't know who they are, you don't know if they're good, bad, or indifferent. You have no idea who they are. And then all these arguments come out. Oh, well, they just, they're just They're looking for a better life. They're just coming here for a better life. They're just coming here to work. They're coming here for their family, and they kind of put you in a this social no-win situation where if you argue against that, then you're a bad person. But unfortunately, the results, as in case with MS-13, and in Europe, a lot of these violent people that have immigrated to a lot of these European countries, in the wash, we find that it's not a good practice to just do that. And MS-13 was definitely a thorn in the side of most of the border countries, the border states of the United States. But it's even in Canada. MS-13 was they still have a presence in Canada, Mexico, Central America. But as you say, they pretty much got their start in Los Angeles, California. So they had a real heavy presence there.
Why target this group? Why target this one specific group? Because I think a lot of people are saying, we are taking one sector of the population and we are accusing all of them to be MS-13 members or some sort of supporter or being along those lines. So I can see where people get upset because there are a lot of El Salvadorans who have made their way into the United States legally and illegally who are just law-abiding citizens. They don't want any part of that violence. Yet they're lumped in because of the place of birth.
Right. Well, I don't know. To draw an analogy, it would be if you and I were desperate and out and homeless, and we decide to break into a house together. But I break into the house only to stay out of the rain and for shelter and maybe get something to eat. But you break in the house to steal and cause violence and burn the place down. What do they say? What's the result there? You say, well, I'm going to leave the door open for people like you who don't want. It doesn't make sense. That's why we have laws and we have borders and we have processes where people can come in legally and be vetted. That's the purpose of having a system in place. We don't have a sign. The United States doesn't have a sign at the border that says, you cannot come in here under any circumstances. That's not our policy. Our policy in the United States is, yes, you can come here. We have some paperwork and some questions for you. Please, stand in line, and when we process you, you'll probably get a shot at the American dream. We have that system in place. So there really is no excuse for any illegal immigration. I don't care if your intentions are pure or otherwise. If you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law. And demanding that people follow that law in the name of security is not, in my estimation, has never been anti-humanitarian. Anything but that. We're trying to preserve our security here. As far as targeting that particular group, if you're talking about El Salvadorian immigrants, I don't think that they are targeting that group in that way. I think they're targeting actual MS-13 members and anyone that's supporting them. I think the FBI actually has done and ICE has done a really good job recently of rooting out MS-13. They took a really hardline approach with them, which previously hadn't been done. Here and there, pockets. But they've been taking some major hits recently with FBI and ICE. So I think it's a good thing, actually. I don't see where the criticism comes from.
Well, I mean, you're going to get sympathizers on everything. That maybe you can pull a Justin Trudeau and try and rehabilitate these people to become good, productive citizens. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't really buy into it with the way things are going up here with Justin Trudeau saying that he's trying to do that with former ISIS terrorists who decided, I want to come back home to Canada. We can get into that a little bit later on in the show. But
yes,
I think
the returnees.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, though, Jamie, is there are a lot of people out there saying, okay, you're picking on MS-13, that's great, but what about the Bloods? What about the Crips? What about the Hells Angels or the Banditos or any other motorcycle gang out there or street gang that is causing a lot of this violence and senseless violence, whether it's in LA, whether it's in Chicago, New York? Why pick on just one group?
Well, I think that those groups have been targeted. I don't think those groups are actually all that, their network isn't all that strong these days. When you talk about the Crips and the Bloods, yeah, they still exist, but that the network that once existed with them that was so strong and influential and dangerous has been affected. So it's not like those issues aren't addressed. They've been severely watered down over the years. Motorcycle gangs, they're really not that widespread as far as criminal activity. Like, in other words, a network of dangerous criminals. That lifestyle, I guess, certainly there's pockets where people are dangerous, individuals or little cliques. But a gang like MS-13, at least in current times, they stand for violence. That like you described earlier, they have no discretion about what they do. They have no code of honor or any pseudo code of honor or anything like that. I mean, they're just part of their rite of passage is extreme violence. In other words, if you're not willing and ready to do extreme violence, they don't really want you in the game. That's part of it, So it's a dangerous bunch of people. There's nothing noble about that gang or being in it or associated with it or propping it up. I don't know how anyone in their right mind could be sympathetic towards someone associated with MS-13. I really don't.
Why are we seeing the hue and cry in some of the media outlets then saying maybe this isn't the way to do this?
Well, you're always, like you said, you're always going to have that. That's bizarre to me. I think that a lot of that is coming from, strange things happen in the media and in certain social segments, and I struggle myself to understand why are some people empathetic towards terrorists and violent gang members, and why are we worried? Like right now, President Trump is taking heat for his animal comment in regards to MS-13, and it got conflated into he means immigrants. He's prejudiced, or he's racist. He means immigrants. No, that's not what he meant at all. The context of what he was speaking about was the violent MS-13 gang, but for political reasons and social reasons and all kinds of people, things get twisted and turned around, and I don't understand it. I understand the idea that some of it may be engineered, and that to me is interesting. Why the public falls for it, certain parts of the public, primarily a lot on the left, unfortunately, they seem to fall for it a lot. But if you want to talk about from an engineering standpoint, I believe that that's behind a lot of it. I think that there's a global initiative to water down the sovereignty of nations, all nations, and to make the world a big mixing pot and to mix things up. And that's, if you just look across the globe, you see tons of migration of people, tens and thousands of people, monthly just flooding into Europe, flooding into Canada, trying to come into the United States. And I believe a lot of it is actually engineered and designed, it's designed to that end. And so I see the engineering part of it, and I understand that for what it is. That's a globalist agenda, and I'm not for it, obviously. But how it gets sold to the certain parts of the public, to the point of which those segments actually buy into it in a visceral way, in a real emotional way, to the point where if you don't support this mass migration of all these people who you have not vetted, you don't know anything about them, you don't know their culture, you don't know their language, you don't know their behavior, you don't know anything about them as a group or as individuals, but yet you're willing to just give them safe harbor and let them just flood in. And I just think that that's extremely careless. I think it goes against common sense to me. I mean, the United States, for example, is a nation of immigrants. That's what we are. And most good people in the United States are, inherently welcoming of other cultures and welcoming of immigrants and diversity. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about our nation. Everybody, I think, with the right mind embraces that idea. But there has to be some order to it. There has to be some sense of vetting to it. It's not just like, if you can make it across the border in the dead of the night, we'll take you. We don't need to know who you are, what your intentions are, or anything else. That to me is just careless. And so why people buy into that train of thought and do it in such an emotional, passionate way, I really don't know. I think they buy into a lot of the hype that's sold to them by the media, that if you don't do that, well, there must be something wrong with you. Maybe you're a bigot or a racist, or you're not a humanitarian and you don't care about people, and which is absolutely a false narrative.
And I can understand that, especially when it comes to gangs. But let's face it, there's also, Jamie, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second, there's also a lot of illegal immigrants that come from allied countries. Japan, Canada, the UK. You've known some of them. I've known some of them. And why aren't we picking on them?
Why aren't we picking on them?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we're not. Well, first of all, your choice of words, picking on them, I don't see it as picking on anybody. If you're asking why the agencies, the law enforcement agencies who are handling that, aren't targeting other things, I think they are, actually. I'll give you a good example. I have a very good friend who lives on Galapagos, how do you say it? Galapagos Island, or
Galapagos Islands?
Galapagos, yeah, I can't say the word tonight. He lives on Galapagos Islands, and I've known him for 12 years. He's a good friend of mine. He's recently got married to another Canadian girl who I know, and they have a newborn baby son, and he's always had, he and his family have always had a vacation spot in Vegas here in the United States. And so he's made a practice over the years of, in a legal way, coming back and forth, from the United States back to Canada, and but recently there was a mix-up in paperwork, an innocent one, by the way, on the part of his wife, and now she is not allowed into the United States for over a year now. So it's not like people aren't doing their jobs. I think that was ridiculous for them to do that. But if you've ever tried to cross the border from Canada to the United States on a regular basis, you'll know that people are doing their jobs. They're not just targeting a certain skin color or a certain this or a certain that. The media likes to sell it that way, but it's really not that way. But if you're asking me my personal position, I don't support illegal immigration from anyone personally, and I don't think anyone should. And I don't care what their intentions are. I don't care what their race is, their nationality, their ethnicity. I don't care about any of that. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Legal is legal and illegal is illegal. So, if you're say a woman from Mexico who wants to come to the United States and go to school and learn the language and become a success and whatever you want to do, I think that's a great story. I think that's amazing. You would have my support. Same if it was a person from Canada or anywhere, Japan, as you mentioned. I don't care. My point is that for someone to argue that it's okay for anyone to bypass the system is nuts. They're just nuts. I don't support that. Yeah, I don't care. It's not it's not a situation where I don't have empathy for people. I do, but we have to have laws. I mean, if we're not going to have laws, let's just say screw it, and then there doesn't need to be a Canada and Mexico and the United States. We're just one big continent, and hell, let's don't even lock our doors or have fences up.
I'm going to take this one step, Jamie. I'm going to take this one step further though, because I think it's a little bit more difficult than that when you look at how things are tied in. A lot of these illegal immigrants have been given banking information. They've been given credit. They're able to take out vehicle loans, mortgage loans. They're able to start businesses in the United States, all while they are illegal immigrants. They pay taxes. So how illegal are they if they've done everything that you're supposed to do as an American? They bought homes. They've contributed to the economy. And I think of my cousin at this point, who lives in Las Vegas, came down from Calgary, him and his wife and their two young children at the time. Their children were, I believe, the ages of 4 and 2 at the time, or 3 and 1, where Las Vegas is all they know is home. They consider themselves American, not Canadian, even though they hold Canadian citizenship. My cousin has a mortgage. He has vehicle payments. He just traded in his vehicle to take out a new vehicle loan. If you're an illegal immigrant, how the hell are you getting credit in the country? So it's all right.
Well, let's cover some of that. First of all, you said how illegal is that? It's very illegal. Okay, and I don't support it, and I don't think the examples like that are something that we should use as a standard to say, well, see how well it works. Because look at it this way. You said that your cousin, for example, got a mortgage, bought a house, bought a car, this, that, and the other thing, right? All of that stuff is not easy. It's not easy to get a mortgage. I mean, you got to go down to the bank. You got to fill out paperwork. You got to show IDs, all kinds of things, right? Same with buying a car, getting a license, all these different things, right? So if someone can go to the trouble to do all of that, why couldn't they go through the legal process to become a citizen? If their intentions are good and they're good people and, as you point out, productive people, right? The system allows for those types of people to be vetted and go through the system. That's why we have a system. So if someone can take the trouble to do all of those other academic procedures to get a mortgage and buy a car and pay taxes and all these functions, why can't they do the other? You see what I'm saying? And it's not your cousin that we're worried about. It's that if we start making excuses that it's okay to do that and bypass the system, then we're going to let in people who we should have stopped. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. And my cousin was a little bit of a different scenario, because they went in and they moved to the U.S. in just before 9/11. And they were in process. They already had green cards. They were in the process of getting green cards when 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden that entire program was shut down. So here they are, right, stuck. They've sold everything in Calgary, Alberta.
Right.
And they've now taken their money that they made off their house to purchase a home in Las Vegas, because the company that they were working for at that time said, we're covering your green cards, do not worry about it. That company, after I believe 1 or 2 years, went bankrupt because it just wasn't doing very well. And so here he is, mortgage and house in Las Vegas, or just
right
outside. Okay, so there's a lot of people, Jamie, who are caught. But I guess looking at the financial side, because I used to work in finance, I know in Canada, if you do not have a proper social insurance number, we can't give you money.
Right.
You cannot get a loan.
Right.
Or have credit. Yet maybe that's part of the reason why of the economic collapse a decade ago. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Sounds like your cousin got trapped in a hard luck circumstance. And let me be clear. I don't think that any bureaucracy in the United States is a great bureaucracy. Okay. I'm usually very clear on that. I'm no fan of the government or government systems or bureaucracies, and all of our agencies are fat and bogged down and, so much red tape. So I wouldn't for a minute argue that our system is great, even our immigration system. And I would venture to bet that there are probably problems with our immigration system that need vast restructuring, and that would help a lot of these immigrants that do have good intentions and that are trying to get here. I hear stories all the time about people who are trying to do it the right way and have so much trouble, and they have to wait forever, and all these different stories. So I'm not arguing that we have a great system and that it's easy to do. But what I am saying is that we have to look, it's better to work on that problem, if that is a problem, fix the system, as opposed to going around it. Because what would happen if your cousin, who has put all this time and energy and effort into building a life in the United States, what would happen if the system catches up with him and ships him back to Canada because he didn't do it the right way? You see what I'm saying? Would you argue that the system then at that point is in the wrong? You know what I mean? Then the lines get blurred about, well, this guy can break the system, he can break the rules, he can break the law, but this guy can't. You know what I mean? That's the whole point and purpose of laws. You know what I mean? Now, I do agree that, his story and thousands of stories that I've heard, I would venture to say, in my own estimation, I'm not looking at hard data right now, but I have in the past, I would bet that most people who want to come to the United States have good intentions and should be allowed into the United States or any country of their choosing to better their lives. It's not my place on this earth to say who can't come and go. What I argue is that if you're going to define a country, this is a country, and we have laws here. Those laws need to be obeyed. And if we have a system in place, that system needs to be followed. And we can't use our empathy for everybody's hard luck story to bypass a law. Because, if you want to change the law, that's one thing. If you want to fix the system, that's another thing. Those things we can talk about. But just saying, yeah, we got a law, but screw it, then we might as well just not have laws, because laws have meanings. And the flip side of that coin is that, like I said earlier, if we start making blanket allowances for the huge swaths of people who do have good intentions, we're going to also, just by proxy, allow in a whole lot of bad seeds as well that should have been vetted. So I'm pretty staunch on my position anyway on keeping laws in place and making sure that people that want to migrate somewhere are vetted. I do not believe in mass migration. I don't believe in anybody skirting the laws or immigrating to somewhere illegally. I'm just not a big fan of it. Not at all.
I understand where you're going with that. I really do. And there has to be a process. We're seeing it up here in Canada where it's funny. A lot of the illegal immigrants that have come over from war-torn countries into the United States, they are now trying to evade ICE and taking bus loads up to the border where they are crossing into the Canadian border, and we are taking them in as refugees.
Yeah.
So it shows the difference in thinking. Now, a lot of Canadians, because we are a sympathetic bunch, because we are a bleeding heart type country, a lot of Canadians will say, well, come on in. Come on in.
Well, a lot of Americans will too. Yeah. And they are. I'm sure you're familiar with the term sanctuary cities and those types of things, where they embrace illegal aliens, en masse, and hide them and protect them and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, Canada has a tradition of being a little more welcoming of that sort of thing. And with Trudeau, he's actually trying to make it policy where that's the norm as opposed to the exception. But see, that's following suit to what I'm seeing. See, I look at this not only just in a narrow perspective of, my sense of nationalism towards the United States, because I'm a United States citizen, and the preservation of our culture, the preservation of our nation and our border and our laws and our Constitution and all that stuff that I find important. It's not just that. I'm also taking note. It's not just a defensive position of those things. It's inclusive of that, but it's also the bigger picture, because like I said earlier, in European countries, we're seeing mass migration in various parts of the world. And it's turning out very bad results. A lot of crime, rape, mass rape in places like Sweden. The UK is having more and more terrorist attacks over there by illegal immigrants and mass migrants. It's just not. It's not a good thing to skirt laws and skirt the system and just allow people to flood into unchecked into an established culture. The end result is not going to be peace and wonderful. I think if people want to come into another culture or another nation or migrate or move or whatever it is, temporarily, indefinitely, permanently, for work, for pleasure, for whatever reason, you should do it legally. And that's not happening in most parts of the world right now. In a lot of parts of Europe, in the United States, and Canada, you're seeing a lot of unchecked migration. And I think it's by design, to be honest with you. I think it's a global agenda to do that. And so not only is it my sense of, American interest, it's also kind of it's because I have an observation of what's going on the globe. I'm seeing this happen. I'm seeing this happen everywhere. So to me, it's a pattern. There's a reason for it. And the everyday person gets sucked up into this debate of what side of the political debate are you on? Are you a humanitarian that thinks that anyone should be welcome, or are you a bigoted racist that thinks that people shouldn't be allowed? Well, first of all, that's not even the argument. Most people just want the laws to be followed. Most people are not saying people shouldn't come here. If you really listen, that's not what they're saying. What people are saying is, sure, come, but do it the right way. But there's a certain segment of the population and the media and everything is they're not really driving the narrative in that context. They're driving it to make it look like if you don't support illegal immigration, then you don't support immigration at all, which is absolutely not true and is a gross mischaracterization of what people really think. And they conflate it even further. If you take that position that you want laws to be followed, they conflate it even further to imply that you must be a racist, or you're not empathetic, or you don't have any sense of humanitarianism in yourself. You don't want to help anybody, and blah blah blah. And all of that's just not true. That's a false argument. So.
Let's move on here from the whole immigration side to the political side, because Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was recently at New York University for a commencement speech where he was given an honorary degree talking about how the world needs to all come together as one, doesn't matter race, religion, or anything like that. Yet here in Canada, he has been quite duly noted as playing favorites. And a lot of people are saying, why is our prime minister basically saying, do as I say, not as I do?
Well, who is he playing favorites with?
Well, he is playing favorites up here with a number of more of a globalist union in Canada. Right, where
I didn't know that's what you were referring.
Rather than taking care of the citizens, it's about taking care of minority political type groups.
Right. Yeah, I think Trudeau is a global player. There's no question about that in my mind. I think he's pretty. In fact, he's one of the more open ones about it. He may not even put it in those terms, but. His actions definitely speak to that, and we've had a pattern of that over the past 8 years with Obama. Obama was a globalist. He was a big apologist for the United States around the world, and most of his policies fed directly into a global agenda. But to be fair, I believe Bush was too. Bush Jr. and Bush Sr. So in the United States, I think that agenda has been going for a while. I'd like to believe that Trump is not doing that because he seems to be butting heads with everyone, primarily the globalists and the deep state here in the United States. So I don't I would like to think that he's up against that, because I think that's what we need. Otherwise, if Trump wouldn't be in office right now, we'd probably have Hillary Clinton or Bernie, and I think we'd be right in lockstep with Trudeau. I think that, because that's what the globalists want. They want mass migration. They want to break down the sovereignty of nations. And as you phrased it, he cares more. It seems to you that Trudeau cares more about immigrants and minorities than he does about Canadian citizens. And that's true. His actions show that. And that's what I think people who, like myself in the United States, we're alarmed by that. It has nothing to do with, not wanting to have goodwill on the world and people to get along and, people to migrate to other places and mix cultures. And it has nothing to do with that. All that's good. All that's fine and good. But when it's forced and engineered and deliberate and it breaks down your own sovereignty, and it looks like your leaders are selling out your country and your laws and your value systems and all of that to trade for a global agenda, that's very alarming. So that's what I read into Trudeau by his actions and his words and everything else.
Mm-hmm. It is a real dangerous side to absolutely everything. I mean, you want to be able to take care of people. You want to have people come in and open up and be a part of your society. It doesn't matter where they come from. But when you're trying to reintegrate terrorists, like what is happening up here, that's not a good sign. Especially when when he is refusing to call them terrorists. All right. He's refusing to call them terrorists. He is calling them foreign travelers.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what I'm saying, Dave, is that, when you see the ridiculous side of it, right, then that's when you really get to examine that this is an agenda at play. Because, see, a lot of subtleties happen in all of this. A lot of business as usual and a lot of baby steps towards their agenda. So we don't always notice it. We don't always feel it. It's kind of like the frog in the boiling pot scenario, right? The frog doesn't know that he's in danger until he's boiling. He could turn up the heat a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And that's generally the pace at which the globalists and the New World Order and all that move. That's generally the pace they like to move. But when they do these extreme things that just leave you scratching your head, those are things you have to really pay attention to, because that's when they're really showing their cards, right? Like, for example, Trump calling a violent gang animals. Well, that's appropriate. I don't have a problem with that. Politicians have always used that kind of language against terrorists and violent gangs and whatever else. But the media is now twisting that to where, oh my God, he's a racist, or because he said he called gang members animals. How bizarre is that? And how bizarre is it for Trudeau to call terrorists? What was the phrase he uses? You said it earlier.
Foreign travelers.
Foreign travelers. That sounds so nice. There should be
it is gentle,
the family movie, Disney movie, Foreign Travelers, starring Anthony Michael Hall. It's just ridiculous. I don't know where. That's what I'm saying. When they show their cards in those ridiculous manners like that, that's when you're like, wait a minute. You really should take pause and look at the big picture at that point. See, but that gets swept under the rug. It becomes a piece of news, right? That's swept under the rug, and it just gets absorbed into the tapestry of daily business. And, we make fun of it for a little while. Did you hear Trudeau called terrorists foreign travelers? Ha ha, and nothing gets done. Nobody revolts. Nobody, you know what I mean? Nothing. That's the slow, methodic march of globalism. That's the slow, methodic march of the New World Order, is that they can show their cards from time to time and be that wacko, but nothing really ever happens. You see what I'm saying? Nothing. We can acknowledge it. We can go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. But what do we do about it? We really don't do anything about it. We just absorb it. And then the next thing that comes along, we're kind of numb to it. We kind of, and then before you know it, it's a social trend and everybody's on board. So globalism is not a quick plan. It never has been a quick plan. And I think when you see people like Trudeau leading the way he's leading, and some of the other leaders around the world, they're showing their cards. They're really showing you the direction that we're going. And so I'm not happy with it, personally. You know this.
On that note, Jamie, we're about 30 seconds away from going back into the commercial break and then coming out with one more hour with you, my friend, talking about all sorts of interesting topics tonight. We're going to get into false flags. All of a sudden, the idea that false flags and the idea of them has really died down. We don't see that topic all of a sudden popping up as prevalent as we did, say, 6 months to a year ago. So I want to get into that with you and so much more right after this. You are listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Jamie Sexton from the Rebel Planet is here with us. Jamie comes in the third Thursday of every month. This is our one night of the month where we actually talk about what's going on in the news, on the alternative side, on the mainstream side, and so much more. We'll get into it. And the thought of the Dave coming up in hour number 3.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Of Spaced Out Radio tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Mary Ducina is going to join us. She's a psychic intuitive. We're going to talk about spirituality. We're going to get into intuition. How do we work our own? We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network. You can also watch us live on Periscope.tv. and our archives. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. What you can do there is hit that subscribe button, check out our archives. We're all right there. So just kind of hang out. Be one with us. Be one with us. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. I have no idea what this is. How do you pronounce CWTCH? CWTCH. Quitch? Quitch? Is that how it's pronounced? I have no idea, but Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, has a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers Contact TV, and so much more. Final time tonight, we introduce the Rebel Planet. Jamie Sexton is with us. He comes in the third Thursday of every month to talk all things alternative, as we deal in the alternative media side every now and again. Welcome back, Jamie.
Good to be back.
False flags. I want to get into these.
Yes, sir.
Because for the last couple of years, every time there was any sort of incident, there was some sort of person within minutes calling false flags, whether it was a school shooting, whether it was Las Vegas, whether it was planes crashing into World Trade Centers. Doesn't matter what the event was, everybody was signaling false flag. And since the social media sites and the mainstream media really seems to be cracking down on these false flag people from claiming everything is a hoax, we haven't heard much of them recently. Do you think this is because we are at a point where we're sick and tired of, the sky is falling crowd?
I don't know. I don't think so. No. I think a lot of that is inherent to human behavior, and you're never going to really get rid of that. I think the reason we haven't seen it is because there hasn't been an incident. The next major incident that happens, it'll be back in full force. But, you and I have talked about this in different ways before, and to some extent, I think the things that people criticize and worry about in terms of discussing false flags or alternative narratives or things like that, I am not the least bit of a fan of squelching that at all, or shutting that down, filtering it, or anything else. I'm just not. I think that it's very, very slippery slope to get in the business of doing that, because you in my opinion, you could watch a polished news network, and I won't name any names, right? But you could watch a polished news network that has, years of being in the business. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they've got some 3-letter name with, that was derived out of the alphabet, and they've got, famous host of their shows. In other words, they're just what we would consider a legitimate news organization. And they have and they will lie to you. They have and they will twist, bend, skew, and distort stories to fit a narrative, whether it be a political narrative, a corporate narrative, or anything else. And then along comes the internet, and you have complete freedom to be an independent journalist, an opinionated columnist, a blogger, or just weigh in on a chat room, or maybe share your experience. Maybe you have some inside knowledge about something, yada, yada, yada. And then everybody enjoys it. Everybody gets involved with it. And they start sharing their ghost stories and their UFO stories and their political theory stories and all these different stories, which I think is a good thing. I think that that's great. Not only is it fun and exciting and gets everybody involved, but you stand a really, really good chance of getting information that's not filtered, that you're not going to get anywhere else. So the risk that some of that information doesn't come from a big polished studio that's corporate paid for, that it may not be accurate all the time, I'll take that risk as opposed to any suggestion that those sources be shut down. So anytime there's an incident in our world that affects people, like you said, a mass shooting or a bombing or a plane crash or whatever it may be, some act of war, this, that, or the other thing, I welcome any and all speculation about that. All conversations, all theories. I don't think it's healthy at all in the least. In fact, quite the contrary, to shut that down, filter it, censor it, regulate it, or anything else. I think the danger in squelching that is far outweighs the risk of you getting some information that's not quite accurate. I think it's up to the individual to decide where their ideology leans, where their inclinations lead, where their instinct leads them. You know what I mean? After a while, if you've got a discernible personality, you'll be able to filter things through your own lens in that way, which you're going to do anyway. We do that regardless. So when it comes to the idea of, well, an incident happened in the world, and then now there's a whole plethora of conspiracy theories about said event, and people are calling it a false flag and entertaining all sorts of different variations of the theories, blah, 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 blah. That's to be expected. And I fully welcome that, you know what I mean? I hope that never changes, to be perfectly honest with you. I do not want to live in any sort of culture that offers some sort of rigidity to how information is censored and filtered and regulated. I don't want any group, organization, government, figurehead, law, anything telling people what conversations they can have or can't have, or what language they can use and not use. Language and communication and writing and speaking and all those things should always be 100% free and open, in my estimation. That's something I'm extremely passionate about. So when it gets to the business of false flags, well, to be perfectly honest with you, there are false flags. No question about it. They've been well documented throughout history. They've been used by governments. They've been used by organizations. They've been used by business. Basically, the term false flag, as far as I understood it, came from the pirate days when pirates wanted to attack other ships, but so they could get close to those other ships, they would have to disguise themselves with a literal false flag, a flag that you would say, oh, that's our ally. Therefore, the ship would be able to get close enough to attack, because you believed that it was. Of course, that the term false flag has broadened and has slightly different meanings now, but basically a false flag is the way I think about false flag is that if there's an incident that happens in the world and someone wants to entertain the idea that maybe this was a false flag, to me that suggests, well, okay, you're suggesting that they're making it seem, in other words, the media, the officials, whoever's offering the official narrative is presenting that an incident took place and that there's a responsible party for that incident. But you're suggesting, by saying that there's a false flag, you're suggesting, well, they're only making it seem as if it's that party, but it's actually another party, right? Or, to me, it even has it has an even broader suggestion, whereas someone causes an incident to happen, but they want a result to come out of that incident. You know what I'm saying? In other words, they'll, they want a public reaction, or they want the tide of society to move a certain way, or they want to start a war, or they want to start a culture war, or they want to start friction, or, they want the market to move one direction or another. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, the incident itself may actually be organic, and they may still apply that tactic, or the incident itself may be manufactured. But either in either case, they're looking for the result. In other words, they want to take the inertia of the event, the inertia of the public reaction, and use that to move something in a direction, either public sentiment, move the military somewhere, So those things do occur in the world. They, to deny that is very naive. I mean, there are false flags in the world all over the place. But yes, there's also the other side of the coin, which you suggest, Dave, that every time something happens, no matter what it is, if it makes the news, someone's got an alternative theory that suggests that there's a false flag. Do I believe in all that? Every one of them? No. Do I? I don't. But I don't poo-poo the idea of someone entertaining those notions. I welcome it. I think it's a healthy thing, to be honest with you.
I guess the frustration that I have, Jamie, is we have a lot of people out there, and I'm not saying false flags don't happen. The Vietnam War that killed over 58,000 Americans and wounded so many, right. Hundreds of thousands more, both mentally and physically. All right, that was based on a false flag. Invading Iraq was based on a false flag. Mm-hmm. Okay, so false flags are out there. I'm not saying they don't exist. It's the crowd that 5 minutes after the Las Vegas shootings are going on, they're claiming false flag. Or every school shooting is a false flag. Or everything that is done today, if it regards or surrounds the police or firefighters or everything, is a false flag. That's the paranoia that I think is extremely dangerous.
I don't think it's dangerous. I really don't. I don't. I would disagree with you on that. I don't think it's dangerous at all. I think it's annoying. That word you used, I would agree with. I think that it's annoying, and it runs the risk of hurting people's feelings and all these other things. I'm not suggesting that type of behavior doesn't come without some sort of subsequent effects. I'm not suggesting that, but again, I think it is really an inherent part of human behavior. And I think you see it more. I think it's always been there. I think you just see it more now because people have this wonderful tool called the internet to where we can actually communicate better now. So you're just seeing it. It's always been there. Before there was the internet and people could blog about it in mass, and hundreds of thousands of people could weigh in on an event, most people, kept their conversations between themselves and their neighbors and whatever else. And some even chose to write books about it or do documentaries, and they would offer, so you didn't see as much of it in the public market. But I think what you see when you see that is just the way people behave. It's the way that we actually behave. And I don't think that it needs to be changed. I think you just have to, I would argue you just have to accept it for what it is, because I don't think any danger can come out of it. In fact, I think it's more danger. If you want to talk about danger, I think danger comes when you try to filter voices and you try to regulate what's news and what's not news, and we should believe this source but not that source, and maybe that's an idea that's too wacky. We shouldn't entertain that. I'm not a fan of that idea at all. But I do see your frustration, and it is ridiculous. I mean, you take an event like, let's say an act of terrorism, right? Let's say a bomb goes off in a crowded mall or something horrific like that. Within the first hour, you're going to have thousands, or if not tens of thousands, of variations of theories as to why that happened and who's responsible, and it's a false flag, and it's this and it's that, and I know that's going to happen. We're already educated as to how that works, right? I don't really see it as dangerous. What I see as dangerous, Dave, to be honest with you, from my perspective, is that within that same hour, every news channel is going to be reading the same cue card and reading the exact same talking points. So in other words, all of these so-called legitimate news sources, right, are all indoctrinating you to what you need to believe. This is the story. Do not believe anything else. This is the story. You know what I mean? And they sell it, and they sell it, and they sell it. And we've been conditioned over our lifetime to believe that if these high-paid talking heads in their suits are sitting in front of $1 million studio cameras telling us that this is the official story, that was the official story. Well, that may be the official story, but we've learned too many times that it's not the official truth.
Okay, but on the flip side, on a police investigation, they can only give you so much, Jamie, before they could compromise their own investigation to prosecute someone.
Sure, and I accept that. That's a good example of limiting how much information goes out at a certain time. But how many times then, after the investigation has closed, that we don't get the information still, right? How many? So then that whole, well, we couldn't tell you anything because the investigation was going, or the trial was going, so we couldn't tell you. Okay, but why then 10, 15, 20 years after the fact is everything still redacted? You know what I mean? And we see that. We see it in federal cases. We see it in local cases. We see it in international cases. We see it from agencies like the CIA, the FBI. We see it from local law enforcement agencies, sheriff's departments. We see it from city halls. Whenever you have these bureaucracies and these agencies and then these news media agencies, all of these different entities are supposed to be official, entities. And we're supposed to respect them and look up to them and depend on them. And we should. We should to an extent. But we've learned too many times, time and time and time again, that those people who are in places, high places in those agencies and those institutions are fallible. Not only are they fallible because they're human being, which makes them inherently fallible like everybody, but also because most of them turn out to be corrupt and greedy and money hungry and politically corrupt and on the take. and have, alternate agendas. That covers the media and police enforcement and other bureaucracies. Somebody's always getting busted for laundering money or doing this favor, or, you know what I mean? They're just people, man. So I don't put my faith into something just because it has an official label on it. I'm one of those people that I'm perfectly willing to give somebody a minute to give me their crazy theory. You know what I mean? Take the UFO community, for example. I don't have any UFO stories. I've had no experiences. So from where I sit, I've got nothing to legitimize the millions of stories and experiences that other people have had, right? I personally have nothing to back that up on. But I know you, right? And I trust you, and you're my friend, and that's your world. You're completely convinced, and that's your life. You have that. But the government doesn't come out and officially tell us that there's aliens and all these other things. So if I were to look at it with the same discretion, that some people want to measure things by, I would say, well, I haven't heard it on the mainstream news, so it's got to be a stupid theory. It's got to be crap. There's nothing to it. It's not real. It's not real until Dan Rather tells me it's real. It's not real until, what's his name? Anderson Cooper tells me it's real. You know what I mean? I don't set my standards by that. I don't buy into that. I think there is a very fascinating world out there, and I think a lot of times, truth is stranger than fiction, and I think that history proves that. And we don't find out about things until decades and decades and decades after. You know what I mean? Just like last year, for example, we got the unredacted portions of the Kennedy assassination. Yeah, right? Okay. Now, did it escape anyone that those files indicated that there were more than one shooter? Right? I mean, that was hype for a couple of weeks. People talked about it around the water cooler. Some news agencies covered it. Everybody's like, wow, wow, wow. But does it change history? You know what I mean? Is everybody up in arms? Is anybody demanding that the investigation is reopened and that we look into it again to find out who these other shooters were? Is that being done? No, it's not being done. Will it be done? No, it won't. Why? Because what happened during the day when it happened, during that time, the mainstream media and the licensed news organizations came up with an official narrative. The media covered it. The FBI told it. Law enforcement told it. They all told the same official story. And it got the big official stamp. And so that's history. And it will forevermore be history, even though we've already learned that that's not accurate. People, it's going to be what it's going to be. And nobody's up in arms. See what I'm saying? So it's not until decades and decades after that we find out that Vietnam was based on a false flag, or that JFK was probably killed by multiple shooters, or that, we went into Iraq for illegitimate reasons, a false flag. Time always softens things for the people who mean to lie to us. So, I know we all want the truth, and I when I hear people like you make the argument, and people I talk to all the time, people are like, well, I just want the truth. I don't care what the truth is. I want the truth, the truth, the truth. Well, the truth of it is that the truth is elusive. It really is. The truth can be elusive for decades, or the truth can be elusive for a lifetime. There are probably things that have happened in humanity, monumental things that have changed the course of the history of mankind forever in big ways that just weren't recorded, that we will never know about. We will never know the truth because they were not recorded, or they were buried, or this or that. So man's pursuit and hunger for the truth is legitimate, and I'm on board with that. I think, that's a noble thing. But we also know that there's a whole lot of inherent flaws in human nature. And we do know that false flags exist and that people do bad things for ulterior motives. And so, while there is a sour part of it, and, like you said, an annoying part to it, I welcome it. I like people throwing their theories out there, no matter how bizarre they are, how wild, or anything else. I, for one, don't read those things and immediately jump to the conclusion that, hey, did you see this thing on 4chan, or on the dark web, or on this website or that website, or, yeah, man, this is what's really going on. See, I don't emotionally get swayed that way any more than I do if I'm watching a mainstream news segment. And that I guess that's what I'm suggesting, is that you've got to kind of have you've got to sort of develop an internal sense of your position on things, and your own sense and ability to discern things, and your own path of reasoning. And I think that you become more informed and more able to do that with more information, not less information. So, I understand your points and your frustration with it, and this is brought up a lot. But at the end of the day, man, I hope that we never have regulation or censorship or filtering on people's positions, theories, stories, whether they be ghost stories, alien stories, political stories. I think the danger is when we start trying to filter that stuff. I'm not for that at all.
We are going to switch to one final topic tonight, and I think this is an important one, because when we first had you on the show, we talked about this subject a little bit. And we're going back to an alleged airplane crash back in March of 2014 when Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 disappeared off the radar. 239 people on board dead. Not a single trace of that aircraft has been found in the ocean, which they suspect it crashed. Now, today, on Australia's 60 Minutes, there are experts, including one here from Canada, who believe that the pilot of the plane turned off the radar beacon, Captain Zahri Ahmed Shah, because he was depressed his wife was going to be leaving him, and decided to commit one of the biggest murder-suicides ever. Now, skeptics are saying this is nothing new that we haven't heard in the past, but really, there is absolutely no proof. What do you think happened to MH370?
My personal feeling, and I looked into this pretty extensively when it happened. It was one of those stories that I just kind of dove into, and I found it really curious. My personal feeling is that plane landed at Diego Garcia, which is a very well hidden U.S. military base located on an island in the South Pacific. So I think that's where it went. There seems to be some indication that the people on that flight, were alive when they landed, but never made it off the island alive. So I can't verify that, but that makes a lot of sense if you really look into the story. Now, the idea about the pilot committing suicide, that's not a new story. That's actually.
I know that. I know that. Yeah. And the article that I read on the Washington Post about this was there are a number of skeptical people saying, how is this even new? How are we drawing this conclusion when there is zero shred of evidence that this even happened?
Right. Exactly. I think they're just trying to come back and wrap up the story again and give it, more... they're trying to legitimize the original official narrative, but I don't see any more proof of that. You know what I mean? Than there was in the beginning. It's just a really strange. I think I'll go a step further. There was another Malaysian flight, same airline, that crashed, and I forget the.
Well, it was shot down. It was shot down in the Ukraine.
Shot down. That's right. It was shot down. In Syria? Is that where it was shot down?
No, in Ukraine during the battle for the Crimea.
Right. Okay. I think that plane was Flight 370. I when I was looking into it at the time, I believed that. Everything was telling me that that's what had happened to that actual airplane, because they had to do something with the plane. I mean, they could have dismantled it, on the island. They could have done a lot of different things with it. But I think that they figured, well, let's just crash it and be done with it. And that, since there was already conflict in the area, I think that probably just fit the narrative really well for them. And they knew that if that plane flew over that area, that of course it would be shot down. There was already conflict in the area. So I don't know. That's what I believe. I think that that's what happened to that flight. I don't.
What I found strange about it, Jamie, was we know that 20 of China's top electronic warfare specialists were on that plane.
Right. They were working on cloaking technology. It was actually a Texas-based company, and they were working on different things. But from what I understand, they were working on cloaking technology that, and there was a strange twist to that too. I believe it was the Rockefellers who were involved in that. I believe was it David Rockefeller that actually his company had just gone into partnership with that Texas-based technical company, and from what I understood, the way that the ownership of that technology that they had just discovered and they were working on, the legal way that the ownership of those patents and that technology broke down was that because of the way that all those people died, and including some of the owners of those patents, and the window of time in which all the legal processes of patents were happening, that Rockefeller would get all those patents. In other words, they became his because of those deaths, because of that crash. And so I don't, now I know that transfer, the legal part of what I just talked about, from what I understand, was substantiated. I don't think there's any argument about the fact that he was involved with that technology and that he now owns it. But what's being done with that technology, how far they were into it, what it's being used for, yada, 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 I don't think there's been anything new on that. So I don't know. and I don't know why all those people were on the plane to begin with, to be honest with you. That many people associated with one project, high-level people, not only engineers and technicians, but also owners of the patents, that and CEOs of that Texas-based company were all on one flight, and that flight, just mysteriously disappears. That's very strange.
Here's where I have the tinfoil on my head. All right. One has to do with cell phones. One has to do with Facebook.
Okay.
Family members were calling their loved ones on their cell phones.
Yes.
And the phones the phones were ringing. Normally, when you drop a phone in water, what happens to it? Granted, most phones now are all waterproof, but going back 3 years, not everybody had the waterproof phone unless you were using a Samsung, a certain brand of Samsung Galaxy. Okay, so what happens is people, and they had mentioned on the news that people were calling their mobile phones iPhones. Maybe they just used it as a term. I don't know. But when you drop an iPhone in water, it immediately turns off.
Right. Exactly.
And if the phone is ringing, that means that phone is on. Otherwise, it goes straight to voicemail. That phone is off, and it goes straight to voicemail. That was part one that really got me thinking about it. Number 2 was the Chinese nationals. And then number 3, on Facebook, if you go on Facebook, whether it's on your cell phone, this is the days before, I believe the days before Messenger, or Messenger was just coming out, or whatever it was. But either way, you go on Facebook, you could see a little green dot by who is online and who isn't.
Right.
And some of these people who were on that flight were shown as being logged into Facebook. If your phone is dead and you just died on an airplane,
right?
Why would your light be green? Now, a lot of people may say, well, maybe their laptop at home or their computer at home was still logged in when they left. Could very well be.
Right.
Could very well be. But the chances are 4 or 5 days after the death that you're not going to be logged into Facebook, or your phone isn't going to be ringing.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what confuses me.
Right. Yeah, there could be technical arguments for some of that. There's no need to really hash them out because, we wouldn't solve that mystery tonight. But I would tend to agree with you that some of those people were probably had their phones. I don't think that they had possession of their phones. You have to surmise that if this was a hatch plan from the beginning and you were in charge of it, you would have someone on that plane gathering up cell phones and throwing them in a bucket. Nobody's making any calls in or out. Nobody's letting anybody know that this plane and this flight's being hijacked. I don't know necessarily that anybody actually had their phone in hand, but I would lend credence to the idea that if there were multiple people logged in and their phones were ringing, it's probably a good indication that their phones were not underwater. I don't think that flight went down underwater at all. I think it went to, like I said, Diego Garcia, and the people were offloaded. From what I understand, there was a passenger who claimed that there was a story floating around, and I haven't been able to substantiate this at all, but I should probably revisit it. There was a story that a man texted his wife once they landed on the island of Diego Garcia. Now, he didn't know what island he was on. got that information from other sources and other stories. But early in the game, you'll find it all everywhere now, but early in the game I got some information that's probably where that plane went. But supposedly he smuggled his phone up his rectum. It sounds very painful, and I'm not sure how one would even do that. But supposedly he kept his phone and text, I believe it was his wife that he text, girlfriend, someone he text, and let them know that they were in a dark hangar, and that, you know, they were being held. His flight was hijacked, and they were in a dark hangar. He didn't know where he was, and that he had smuggled his phone. And that was the last that she had heard from him.
I found the story online. It's a guy named Jim Stone, who nobody's ever really been able to verify, who received a message from one of the people on the plane named Philip Wood, saying that that they were hijacked by military personnel, and that they had arrived back at the coordinates which placed them at Diego Garcia.
Right. Yeah. So that all ties into, you know, other things like the Diego, for example, the Diego Garcia. Now, somebody could tell that story after the fact, of course, but the Diego Garcia portion of that, like, because I said, like I said, I was on that story from the beginning, and I was, you know, tracking sources and other things, trying to figure out where that plane could have gone, and that base came up. And, you know, nobody really even hardly knew about that base until after that incident to begin with. And, of course, now it's just written up as a conspiracy theory. But if that story could be substantiated, I knew the name Philip Wood. What was the guy? Who did he text? What was the guy's name? I'm going to write that down. You said Jim somebody? You there, Dave?
Yeah, I was just checking out another story on this, and I'm just.
I was going to write down Jim's name.
Quickly pull this back up here. Bear with me.
Okay.
I'll grab it here for you. Jim Stone.
Stone. Okay. Yeah, I want to look into that. I couldn't remember the story very well. I had thought that it was his wife or significant other or someone that he had reached out to. Yeah. I didn't know it was.
Now, there are people out there online saying that he has debunked it, but apparently the message was this: I have been held hostage by unknown military personnel after my flight was hijacked, brackets blindfolded. I have been separated from the rest of the passengers. I am in a cell. My name is Philip Wood. I think I have been drugged as well and cannot think clearly.
He's got a lot working against him to send off a text. He's blindfolded, drugged, and segregated from the group. So, you know, but nevertheless, you said that it sounded like it was debunked.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up this debunked article here from metabunk.org. And
right. So I don't. Yeah. So like I said from the beginning, I've never been able to substantiate much about the Philip Wood thing. I did, like I said, I knew the story was floating around, which I found interesting, but nevertheless, the Diego Garcia part of it, that's my inclination on all that. I think that's what happened to that flight, and then I think the plane, after the fact, was destroyed, like you said, in Ukraine. I think that's what happened to that flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We only got a couple minutes. We only got about 7 minutes left with you, 8 minutes left with you, Jamie. And this is such an interesting topic indeed on whether or not this flight actually claimed. You know, what would be the purpose of doing something like this? Was it about the cloaking? Was it something more? Was it about trying to find out more about China's inside information about their electronic warfare capabilities. Deep down, what do you think this was about?
Well, my hunch is that if this was actually a hijacked flight and those people were done away with, it would lend. I would tend to think it was for the reasons that I had suggested earlier, that someone wanted that technology legally, in a legal capacity, and probably couldn't get it legally without doing it the way they did it, and had the means, the resources, and everything to manipulate that. So that's, that would be my hunch. I'm not really stretch the imagination to connect all those dots, but like I said earlier, man, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and we've seen really crazy things happen in our world. So I wouldn't put it beyond the realm of possibility, and I don't necessarily know that all those dots are part of the puzzle, but my hunch is that plane ended up on Diego Garcia. And if I had to really grasp for a reason why, it would be because somebody wanted the technology that those people were working on. And they were all from one company, all working on, pretty much a focused project at the time. So
now the theory being is that the pilot had depressurized the entire cabin, knocking everybody out. So basically they would have no clue that they were moments away from their imminent death. But at that point, you would think that we would have found scattered remains, luggage, anything in the water, especially in that area where there's so many different countries with so many different militaries that can help. Now, months later, a year later, they found what they thought was parts to that plane, but there's not any real substantial evidence that those belonged to Flight MH370. There was no pings on the black box,
right,
which would indicate that it either went extremely deep or it would malfunction, which would be highly unusual.
Yeah, it is possible to lose planes in the vast ocean. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that a plane could go down in the ocean and you'd never find a trace of it. Obviously that can happen. The ocean's a huge place. But you got me to thinking too, that if you were going to just do away with everyone on the flight, you could have just shot the plane out of the sky or called it a malfunction, and then you'd have pieces of the plane and everything else to really close up your story nicely. So what would be the reason for that plane going all the way to Diego Garcia and not ever finding a plane? And I think it would make sense if some of those people on the plane you actually needed. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you not only wanted the technology and the ownership of it, but you also needed some of the people on that plane as well. You know what I mean? You needed their expertise or their knowledge or something like that. So, that's just a theory. But my gut feeling, based on a lot of different things that I was looking into at the time, suggests that plane most likely did end up on Diego Garcia.
I like Dan's comment in the Spreaker chat room. My guitar pick can never be found.
Who said that? Dan?
Yeah, Dan.
Dan. Isn't that funny, though? You always find them where you don't expect to find them. Like in the dryer, there'll be like 4 or 5 guitar picks in the dryer. And you're like, man, I needed one yesterday. And there's 5 of them in the dryer. Guitar picks are elusive.
I've got them spread all around me. I've got like a dozen spread all around me that I could reach up at any time and grab a guitar pick like this right there. Just did it right there.
Yeah, I keep a bucket of it. Now, you have the ones with Carl's face on it, though, don't you?
No, I got to get some of those. But I do have a Dimebag Darrell pick.
Yes.
Which will end up in your hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were going to will that to me.
I am willing that to you. He was.
I have a little something for you, too, that I've been meaning to give to you, but I don't think it's going to be as special as you wanted it to be.
Oh.
I think you know what I'm talking about. It's what you wanted. I got it for you, but you didn't catch it the way you wanted to.
And how did you come across the Paradise City whistle?
Well, you know that I know people. You know who some of my friends are. So, yeah.
You know, you can't. My birthday is a week from tonight. You cannot tease me like that because honestly, man, all of a sudden I'm out of breath and I'm almost about to start shaking.
Well, man, I would have sent it to you a month ago, but I thought about it and I was like, he's not going to want it because he didn't catch it. And I knew that was the big deal for you. So
I abandoned you in Las Vegas, surrounded by women, to go try and catch that whistle.
We were wondering where you went. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I got your whistle. You know, I hope it means something, even though he didn't catch it.
I mean, dude, are you serious? Because this is important news in my life.
I got it for you, buddy. Who's your buddy? I got it.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, I got it for you.
Okay, so for the people who don't know, my favorite song in the world ever since I heard it back in 1987, song number 6 on Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, is Paradise City. And about a minute into the song, Axl Rose blows this whistle. All right? He then takes the whistle in concert and he throws it into the crowd. All right? Well, when I was in Vegas, where I met up with Jamie, I went to 3 shows in 6 nights. And the first night, I studied. Like, for 3 months, I watched YouTube videos of Axl Rose live, Paradise City. Where does he set up to throw the whistle? And I positioned myself perfectly. Perfectly.
I remember.
I played this out. Okay, I'm with my buddy Mike, who you didn't meet, Jamie. And all of a sudden, this 6'5" dude, on Knocking on Heaven's Door, the second to last song of the night, this 6'5" dude walks right in front of me. I'm 5'9". Mike, well, he's 5'3 and a half, 5'4". All right? And what happens? Axl throws the whistle, it comes down, and it's coming right for me, and it hits this monstrosity of a man right in the head. I offered him $500 for it, right there. I said, dude, it's my birthday. This is the last major item on my bucket list. And he's like, no. And I said, okay, $1,000. And he told me to F off. You cannot be crapping me right now, dude. You cannot be crapping me.
There it is.
Mother of pearl. Mother of pearl. You hold on, Jamie. I got to wrap this thing up and find the words to do it. Jamie Sexton comes on in the third Thursday of every month. Third Thursday of every month. I can't even speak right now. I want that whistle. The Rebel Planet, our night of alternative news right here on Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night, we have Mary Ducina coming on into the program. We're talking intuition. How can you use yours a little bit better for you? We're even going to open up the phone lines tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. God, I love Bumblefoot. Great music. I want to say a big shout out to everybody listening at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. Big thank yous, though, for everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, on the Spreaker chat room, in the SOR Space Travelers, yes, the veterans, and we cannot forget all of you in Periscope tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks for sharing the show, making us bigger and better every single night, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one, everyone. See you tomorrow.
I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you